Hi everyone, welcome to a new video of Taste of Farming series. My name is Katheryn Parraga-Estrada. I am the Mussel Food Safety Extension Specialist at the Virginia Seafood Agriculture Research and Extension Center. Today, I will talk about seafood safety, regulations and requirements you need if you're planning to start selling seafood. Let's say that you are an agriculture, harvester, fisherman, waterman, dealer, etc., and you want to start selling your seafood. So this presentation will give you an overview of things that you will need and who to contact in case you have more questions. So to start, I'll be talking about regulatory agencies in Virginia, permits to sell your seafood products, the Seafood Safety Extension Program here at the Virginia Seafood Area, and a summary. So let's start talking about regulatory agencies. We have federal and state level agencies. FDA and USDA are the federal ones, and the FDA is the one that regulates most of the seafood products, except for catfish that is regulated by USDA. Now to focus in Virginia, we have VDH, that is the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and Virginia Department of Health by the Division of Shellfish Safety, who both of them regulate seafood products here in Virginia. So VDH will deal with finfish and also when you're selling in farmers markets. VDH will control shellfish and crustacean. And as I mentioned before, USDA handles the catfish. Catfish is an invasive species here in Virginia. So many fishermen are catching some of the catfish. However, there is a little bit of confusion about the different regulatory agencies. So just to mention that USDA has similar requirements than FDA. You just need to figure out what are the difference between them in names, but then the documentation will be pretty similar. So let's talk about permits to sell your seafood products. We talk about having VDH and VDH in the state level. So VDH will provide a certificate of inspection after you apply for a license. And for that, you have three options. You can process at your own home. You can do it at a commercial kitchen processing. Or if you're thinking about something bigger, such as a manufacturing or warehouse food establishment. And then we have the VDH, that they will provide a certificate of inspection by the Division of Shellfish Safety for the oysters, clams, and pork crab. So the VDH inspects food establishments, and they are required by the Virginia Food and Drink Law. And it is unlawful to operate as a food manufacturer, food storage warehouse, or retail food establishment until it has been inspected and has been issued a permit for the operation of the food establishment. There are some exceptions, and usually it's for low risk products, which seafood is not one of them. So the enforcement of VDH will be on these requirements that will include regular periodic inspections of food establishments. Also, the food safety specialists, known as inspectors, will ensure that any food or beverage manufactured, produced, processed, packed, exposed, offered, or processed or held for sale is safe for the human consumption, and that is in compliance with the Virginia Food Drink Law and related regulations. So usually the inspectors will go and look for evidence of you doing the things right, following the sanitation practices. If you are taking in consideration allergens, if you're properly labeling, handling temperatures, in general, good manufacturing practices that you're following. And Based on that, you're subject to also unannounced inspections and samplings, as well as an annual fee. Now, VDH, as I mentioned, has the Division of Shellfish Safety and is responsible for protecting the health of the consumers of molluscous shellfish and crustaceans by ensuring that shellfish are growing in open waters and approved waters. So we'll talk more about this, how they classify the harvesting areas, and also, of course, the sanitation standards that they have when you're processing either molluscous shellfish and crustacean. So it's very important at this point that you identify where you plan to sell your seafood products. It can be either retail or wholesale or both. It's up to you. So when we say retail, we're talking about you selling your product directly to the end consumer. That means you selling at a farmer's market or doing direct sales, online sales. So requirements for that will be sometimes can be the seafood hazard certificate, and this will depend on what type of product you're selling. For sure, you will need to follow good manufacturing practices, sanitation standard operating procedures, make sure that you know the allergens. Fish is one of the 9 big allergens based on the FDA list. So you need to make sure that you're properly labeling that seafood product. When we talk about wholesale, means that you're selling in bulk amounts to other companies or restaurants, grocery store, hotels. And for that, you will have to comply. You will need to have a seafood hazard certificate. We will talk about more on how you can get that certification. You will must follow good manufacturer practices, sanitation standard operating procedures. You have to have an allergen cross-contact program, employee trainings, and records. The employee trainings will apply to you as well if you're doing retail, but usually we're talking that maybe it will be only you doing all this processing and selling, so you can have proof that you're getting trained on food safety topics. So for the general information and requirements for VDACs that you need to know and understand are the Virginia Food and Drink Law, good manufacturing practices that are based on the FDA Code Federal Regulation, Title 21, Part 117. Fish and fishery products, that is the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 123. And based on that, you will have to have a hazard analysis, conduct a hazard analysis, and later develop a hazard plan. You also need to make sure that you're controlling the 8 key sanitation areas, and that's based on the sanitation control procedures. You have an allergen control plan and employee training records. So you usually, when you want to start selling, you start the application, VDACs will reach out to you, and then once you have all the requirements, they will come inspect your facility and provide that certificate of inspection. So now let's talk about the different options that you have. One is the home food process, the food processing. And for that, you will need to provide your basic business owner information. For home food processing, it's very important that they will ask you if you have pets. If you mark yes, you need to make sure that the areas where the food is prepared, stored, where all the equipment, the packaging are stored, that the pets will be excluded from that area, and that they will be excluded at all times. For example, you will need to have doors to protect that your pet doesn't go there, even if you're not processing. Placing pets in closed rooms in other areas of your house or installing just baby gates will not satisfy VDAC's requirement for this. Another important thing will be the hours of operation, as it is in your home. The first inspection will be scheduled, so you will know when VDAX will visit you and inspect your home. However, after that, most of the inspections will be unannounced, which means that they can get there anytime. That's why it's important that you provide specific days and hours that you will be processing. Then you will need to make sure that you have all the requirements, the ones that we just saw in the previous slide. The local zoning. You need to have an approval or reading documentation that you have approval from your local zoning office to operate a home food processing business on your property. Also, you need to provide a diagram of the food processing and storage. It can be done by hand, doesn't have to be perfect or, by an architect. You can draw these in the application, and then you will need to provide an explanation of where you're going to prepare the product, where you are storing your utensils, equipment, packaging, all those things. You need to also provide a proof where is your water coming from. Is it municipal? Is it borehole? Or is it a private well? If it is a private well, you will need to present evidence that the water is free of harmful bacteria, such as coliforms. They have to be absent in a sample of well water. This is a requirement, and you need to have those test results no more than 6 months old. And then you need to make sure that the laboratory that you're using is certified by the Virginia Safe Drinking Water Program. Also, for your sewage information, if you have a private sewage disposal, then you need to obtain documentation from an alternative on-site soil evaluator or professional engineer or Virginia Department of Health that the system is adequate for the intended use of your business. You will have to provide employee training and records. Also, you will need to have a plan on how to prevent cross-contamination from your personal belongings to your product. You need to provide a list of how many products and what will be the distribution of those products. So remember, this is important. Are you going to do it as a retailer or wholesale? Also, you will need to have an allergen cross-contact plan. If you're using another ingredients to prepare this product, you will need to have where are you getting those ingredients from, and if there are any other allergens present in those ingredients. Remember that we have nine allergens now because sesame became part of that list this year. Then you will need to describe your formulation. That's the product information. We know that sometimes these are like family recipes, so there is a checkbox that you can mark for trade secret, but they need to know this information. And last but not least would be the label of each product that you are applying for. So it doesn't have to be a final label, it can be a marked label. Now, the difference with the commercial kitchen. When you're using a commercial kitchen, most of the time they will have already some plans such as the sanitation, how they clean, and all those things. So that will help you and make things easier. However, when you're applying, you will have or you will be asked for the same information as the home, except for the pets. But then you will have to provide the business owner information, requirements, and something extra you will have to provide here will be documentation that you have approval from the commercial kitchen that you'll be using. And it can be any email correspondence, official letter, signed contract, or something that indicates that you are allowed to work there. Besides that, we have same requirements as in a home food processing. So now talking about manufacturing and warehouse food establishment. For it, this is when you want to go big and establish your own business. So definitely the application is different. It will ask you more about if it is a new establishment or if you're a new owner, change of the ownership, and all the business information. It will ask you for the names, titles, birthdays, address of the people that will be in the legal ownership of the business. So definitely it's different than the home or commercial kitchen process. Then they will provide you with this pre-operational checklist that has some of the items that we just mentioned. It will ask you about supervisors and employees, documentation of education, training, experience, hygienic practices, allergen control plan, food safety plan, food change program. So this is a longer list. Adequate plumbing, everything will be more specific to a facility. So if you want to learn more about that or you're interested, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you with it. Now let's move to VDH. Why VDH is in charge of the shellfish scan? It is because they're the Shellfish Control Authority. They will authorize waters that are approved for harvesting. And if you go to their website, you will find this shellfish harvesting area map in which you can see what are conditionally approved waters, or that means they are open, or restricted areas, prohibited areas, that means that you're not allowed to harvest from it, or emergency restricted. Usually that's when there is like a rainfall and they have these specific standards, they will close those areas for a period of time so that nobody will get sick if a product comes out of those waters. So then we also have the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. They are the ones that manage the shellfish license for commercial and recreational harvesters or dealers. And they also issue restricted use of shell stock tag. This tag, that is a green color tag, means that they will provide it only to a licensed buyer who has a current certificate of inspection as a sugar packer for shell stock or shellfish harvested from a single harvested area. And it means that the shell stock is intended for further processing prior to distribution to retail or food service. Usually, when the oysters, clams comes from open waters, they will have a white tag that we'll see in a moment. And that's when, most of the time we consume oysters raw because they come from approved waters. So how do you get a certificate of inspection? You will need to apply through VDH and the Department of Health Division of Shellfish Sanitation. And they have two different applications. One will be for shellfish, the other one will be for crab. As I mentioned, they will provide the certificate of inspection annually, and they need to be renewed. They have different times for shellfish or crab. So for shellfish, the certificate of inspection goes from October 1st to September 30, and for crab is from April 1st to March 31st. So that is an important point for you to know. So shellfish harvester in Virginia that harvest viable molluscum such as oysters, hard clams, soft clams, mussels, hard clams, whole scallops, and scallops with roe, and sell that catch to anyone other than a certified shellfish dealer must apply and receive a certificate of inspection. Also, people in Virginia that buy shellfish from harvesters that are certified dealers or certified dealers in other states and then process the shellfish by any means, which means shucking, repacking, retagging, or relabeling and reshipping and selling wholesale, must apply for a certificate of inspection. People who process wok by cooking, cracking, freezing, or selling meat for human consumption wholesale also must apply for and receive that certificate of inspection. People in Virginia who cook blue crabs and then further process them by picking and packing need to apply for and receive a certificate of inspection. The only time that you don't need a certificate of inspection with crabs is when you steam them whole crabs and then offer them for sale without picking the meat. However, it doesn't mean that you don't need to apply for a VDH local permit. So it will be either VDH or VDH inspecting you or providing you this certificate of inspection or license for you to be able to sell the steam crab. So as I mentioned before, for the white tag, we have the information of the harvester, the identification. It's very important for you to know when those shellfish were harvested, what was the time, because there is this shell stock temperature control that will have a specific guidelines depending on the month of harvesting. Also, what is the quantity? And you need to make sure that these tags stay in the container until it is empty, or if it is retagged, and then keep that in file for 90 days as records. And that's when you're doing retag. This might change when you are a warehouse because you will need to keep those records for a longer time. It's very important that if you plan to sell this in a farmer's market and you have more than one source, more than one batch, please don't mix them. Try not to do it because if there is a recall or something, it will be complicated for you to go back and track which of the batches you were selling. Also, it's very important in general with seafood products, make sure that you know what are the temperatures that you need to boil that product. When we're talking about live shellfish, usually it's 45 or below. When we're talking about seafood products that are cold, they should be at 41 if you're selling at the farmer's market, or if you are wholesale, it will have to be 40 or below. And then it will depend also on what type of packaging you're using. So that's when you can come and ask us if you have questions about what are the things that you need to do and what is your product. You can come and work with us. We have a seafood safety extension program in which we train people and also we provide technical assistance or support. So our goal is to use scientific data and then provide technical assistance to create your food safety plan. Also, we provide trainings on the seafood hazard, so you will get a certificate after taking this class. We provide good manufacturing practices, sanitation procedures, how to put together a food allergen plan. In addition to that, we can do microbiology testing if you would like to know shelf life of your products, or if you want to know how effective is your sanitation procedure. So I've been talking about the seafood hazard certificate. That is one of the main requirements when you're working with seafood most of the time. So this is a course that is provided by the Seafood Hazard Alliance in cooperation with the Association of Food and Drug Officials, AFDO. And you have two options for this certificate. One is the basic seafood hazard class, that is a 3-day class. It's in person. And if not, you can have the option of taking it in 2 segments. The first segment is a virtual course provided by Cornell University. And once you complete that one, you have up to 6 months to complete the second 2, which it can be in person or virtually. And it's a 1-day class, but it has to be with an instructor present in class. If you're working with shell stock and you're just a shipper or receiver, Virginia Department of Health with the Division of Shellfish Safety has put together this HACCP that is a 1-day class and will fulfill this requirement. They will provide you with certificate so you can use that as part of your records that you're in compliance. And the difference between them is that they focus more on the the shippers, and what will be the hazards related to that. They base most of the things in the seafood hazard class and also in the National Shellfish Sanitation Program. So what will you learn when you're getting a certificate in the seafood hazard? You will learn on conducting a hazard analysis. For that, you will be provided with the guide. You can find this guide online in the FDA website, in which they have 21 chapters. From chapter 4 to chapter 11, you have a species-related hazard. That means that depending on what is the fish, where you're harvesting it, where are you catching it, what will be the different hazards that you may have related to it. And then from chapter 12 to chapter 21, we have process hazards, which means how you're going to pack that product. Are you cooking it? Is it a ready to eat product? Will it be cooked by the final consumer or the end consumer? All those things will be taken in consideration to determine what will be the hazards. So once you identify the hazards, we also recommend putting together a flow diagram and a narrative, because it's very important to know what is the procedure, how many hours are you handling the product before you're shipping it. All those things are important. Also, we have a product description that we use that will help you to understand better where your product is purchased, how you're receiving it, how you're planning to store it and ship it, how is the product going to be packed, and what is the intended use or the intended consumer. So this is the hazard analysis worksheet that we use. And as you can see, it has several columns in which we'll determine if a potential food safety hazard will be associated with that product at that specific processing step. And then determining if it is significant or not, which means that it can be introduced, enhanced, or eliminated at that step. After we justify if it is or not, then we will determine what are the controls, if it is significant, of course, and if it is a critical control point for us. So after we finish with all that, we'll put together the hazard plan in which we'll have the step, the significant hazards, what are our critical limits for preventing measurements, and then how we're monitoring that preventive measurement. What will be our corrective action if something goes wrong? How can we verify that we are doing that correctly? And what records we will have to prove that we're doing things right? So in general, as we work here in the AREC, is that we will work with you in the product description, your flow diagram, then conduct a hazard analysis, followed by the hazard plan, provide all the logs that you will need as a support documentation, and make sure that you can start selling that product. As I mentioned before, VDH, the Division of Shellfish Safety, they have this one-day hazard, and also they have these online in their website. Those are templates for the hazard plan for reshipper. So you can always get this and just make adjustment to your own process. But you have this as a template available as well. So as summary, I just want to mention that it's very important that you determine which regulatory agency you will be working with, and that you need to apply for a certificate of inspection. Try to start that application as soon as possible, because while you are filling all these things, you get to know what else you need, and you can communicate with VDAX, VDH, or us, and we'll be able to guide you. Also, it's important that you identify where you will be selling this product, retail, wholesale, or both, because the requirements may vary based on that. The time and temperatures are very important when handling seafood. Seafood is one of the highly perishable products. So we need to know what are those temperatures that we need to maintain. Also, remember, you have us here, so if you need help, just reach out to us and we'll be glad to help you. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much. And please, this is my information if you need to reach out. Thank you again. Have a great day.